Hello, I'm Billie Groom, your host of All About Animals Radio, and today I have with me Leif Cocks, and he's just got a wealth of success and advocacy under his belt. So I'm just going to pop right in. Well, Leif, you lead a number of organizations, and you had a lot of programs all under conservation for human and non-human animal, the environment. And for that reason, I just am so honored to have you today on this show and to be able to chat with you about everything that you're doing. And I know that you're super busy, so thank you so much for joining us.
You're most welcome, Billy. It's great to be here. Thank you.
So you're on your way to Sumatra.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing there and what you guys have going on there?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's just a multitude of things. The big picture is, of course, before it's too late in the next decade, we're trying to save complete functioning rainforest ecosystems of the right type, shape, and size of rainforest to take orangutans, elephants, tigers, the other biodiversity, and the indigenous human community through this extinction crisis. And it's got to be the right type, shape, and size. And we only got the next decade to do this. Otherwise, it'll be too late. There may be rainforests after 10 years, but the rainforest ecosystems will be too small, fragmented to survive, and will collapse on itself, environmentally collapse. And in addition, that the population of endangered species and the amount of land for the indigenous communities will be too small for them to survive also. So we're living in this most important decade in human history when we're dealing with a larger picture of saving the planet, climate change. But that's intrinsically linked, and there's feedback loops with our work to save the orangutan and the other species, because saving the rainforest is probably one of the most cost-effective ways we can mitigate climate change. So,
and what is the big that's huge. I mean, right there, that just, there's so many things going through my mind as far as there's this large picture, as you started out saying, but then that also can be broken down into so many other parts. In particular, it's obvious that in order to save a species, we need to save their natural habitat. And right now, the orangutan is it's a critically endangered species. Yes, they are.
That's
is that correct?
Yes, yes.
And is that because their environment is at risk, and also poaching? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes. No. With all the critically endangered species, especially megafauna, the main game is always enough habitat. If you don't have enough habitat, the species can't exist in numbers large enough for that population to survive, and they'll collapse in on itself. Of course,
so let's go back to the rainforest. What would be, sorry to interrupt, you have just a little second of a lag there, so I'm just going to get used to that as we go through. What would be the biggest danger to the rainforest? What's causing the rainforest?
The primary problem is the destruction of the rainforest and its conversion to unsustainable monocultures such as palm oil and pulp paper and rubber, as three examples. And so these monocultures not only obviously destroy the rainforest and therefore kill the orangutan, tigers, elephants, and displace the indigenous communities, but they're unsustainable. So they will collapse in 50 to 60 years' time, leaving an economic as well as environmental wastelands for all of us.
Okay, so your projects over there, are they providing other options and solutions, or is it just a matter of don't do this?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first thing is to say that this is not about the environment versus the economy. It's about a sustainable environment which gives a sustainable economy that benefits all, including future generations. Perfect. And so it's not one of these win-lose situations. We need, and it's about a few greedy people destroying the planet and the
Mm-hmm.
environment here for short-term profit for a few. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about us protecting enough rainforest so the endangered species can survive this extinction crisis. But also we work with the indigenous communities to support them where their ways of life, which have been sustainable over centuries, are no longer sustainable because the vast majority of their ancestral land has been taken away by these big multinationals. So we work to support them so their children stop starving, as an example, educating the children, you bring in health services, but then develop agricultural systems under the rainforest canopy so they once again can prosper and become affluent and into the future.
And how is the response to you? Are you or your organizations and your group in general?
Mm-hmm. Well, for the people who are making a lot of money out of destroying the
They're
future
not
of our planet,
that's sort of obvious.
exactly, and of course, and they often have a lot of economic influence and a lot of political influence because our democracies all over the world tend to be purchased by those which have money. So we don't living in true democracies.
No.
And so there is a huge amount of problems. But what we can do is have synergy and win-win solutions for the local people so they prosper. And of course, the major synergy is with future generations. We have eaten to the capacity for our planet to support future generations. So they're living in a more impoverished, more dangerous environment than we've ever experienced. And they've been robbed. And of course,
yes.
We have a lot of support from increasingly educated younger people who obviously have a vested interest in the work that we're doing to provide a kinder, more sustainable, more economically affluent planet for all.
So do the indigenous cultures see the immediate and long-term value for themselves, or are they brainwashed by some of the larger corporations?
Mm-hmm. There's certainly brainwashing from larger corporations and influence because they do try to manipulate people to make decisions against their own interests, and we see that all over the world where
yes.
Political people get people to vote against their own economic interests through manipulation, and so it's not a unique
yes.
situation.
True.
About the immediate issue, for example, in Bukit-Tigapulu, where I'm going next week, the children were malnourished and not going to school, and they couldn't learn because they weren't getting enough nutrients. They weren't naming their children till 6 years old because most of them were dying. And
oh
so
my goodness.
we're providing food, 2 meals a day for all the children. We're educating children, providing scholarships for high school and education, so unlimited education as far as they can go, and one's already in university. We provided a midwife. We were developing women empowerment through supporting women's groups. And then, so we're doing a whole bunch of things that provide immediate support, which obviously the community welcomes. Now, where the difficult part is, well, we're dealing with two indigenous communities in this particular ecosystem, the Rangarimba hunter-gatherers and Talak Malak who've been /burn agriculture. Now, both these systems have been sustainable over centuries. They're only unsustainable now because the vast majority of the land is gone. So if they continue to do hunting, gathering, and /burn, they will now destroy the remaining environment themselves. Not their fault. Right. But what we know is, although adapting to the environment through culture is far more powerful and reactive than by natural selection alone. And that's why intelligent species such as humans and orangutans and elephants, as 3 examples, primarily adapt to the environment through culture. But there is a limit of its ability to change. And so what you find is, for example, when you have a culture which is then the economic and social environment changes very rapidly, that culture becomes dysfunctional. And we see that all over the world where indigenous communities, environment change. culture can change, but it can't change quick enough to adapt to these very aggressive, quick changes. And so the indigenous communities of Bukit-Pulu are not are still subject to the same problems we have with adapting culture, human cultures all around the world. And so we have to sensitively move them, does it make sense, in a way from, you know, from the systems of living now to a system of living which is sustainable.
Right.
And so that's difficult, and it's difficult
Yep.
for humans, and we see that all over the planet. But we have to do it because, unfortunately, and we shouldn't have to do it. We should be able to just, you know, say no, just live as you've been doing for centuries, and, you know, provide the support, and if, you know, and you change when, if and when you want to change. Unfortunately, that, you know, that beautiful utopian idea is no longer available to us and them. And so it's about then, over quite a long period of time, helping them and slowly moving them to the more sustainable systems. For example, providing economics like shade rubber, jungle, vanilla, cocoa, and coffee under the rainforest canopy for cash crops, and also training them on regenerative agricultural systems for their fruit and vegetables that they grow to support themselves, so they don't have to continue slash and burn. So we have to sensitively and take time to progress them through this while we're supporting their immediate health and economic needs. So it's a long-term process, and it's not easy, as you can imagine, but it's something that is going to be of benefit to them and ensure their long-term prosperity.
And what is the population approximately that you're talking about when you're talking about these people? How many? And how much of a landmass do they cover?
Well, the ecosystems we all try to save are always about 200,000 hectares of rainforest, because below that you're not going to have enough rainforest for the rainforest to survive, because rainforest reduces the ambient temperature. It provides a lot of rainfall, you know, and there's fringe effects, there's edge effects on rainforest. So you have up to 35 to 70% of biodiversity lost 1 kilometer from the edge of the rainforest. Yeah. And so just saving patches of the rainforest or bits of rainforest doesn't work. You got to save complete functioning ecosystems. Right. And even in Bukit-Pulu, where we're working, while we're trying to secure and restore a lot of forests, because you have to restore a lot of forests to stabilize this ecosystem, we started a sea lang honey business with the indigenous community, where we were getting them to harvest the honey in a sustainable way, and then we're getting it to stores in Jakarta, and we're selling it at a premium, making money. But then, because as the rainforest has disappeared around, the ambient temperature has dropped by just a few degrees, which has killed off the bees, which are very sensitive, and therefore the business has collapsed. So we're having these, you know, what I call the feedback loops with the climate change causing more droughts, rainforest doing so. These feedback loops basically have to be stopped and reversed, and so we have to so save these large ecosystems, and within that there's, you know, let's say approximately 2,000 people of indigenous communities can survive in these ecosystems. But one of the things, of course, we're doing and we need to transfer in them, but also the wonderful win-win situation is, once we empower women, and women are often the key to conservation because they intuitively understand conservation better than the male mind, long-term social outcomes rather than win-lose competitive outcomes. We find women all over the world, everywhere, naturally choose to have less babies once they're empowered. So that's a great relief on the ecosystem. And once now we're educating the children and giving opportunities for affluence, a lot of them, you know, like we said, we've got 2 in high school, 1 in university, educating the other. A lot of them may decide they don't want to live in the jungle. They may want to, that's fine, that's wonderful, but they can also become, you know, doctors and lawyers and engineers and get other jobs in the city, and, you know, and come back and visit mum and dad when they want to. So So
And they can
it's,
make
it's
a change and make a difference from where they are and from what the professions that they choose to undertake.
exactly. So the fundamental philosophy underpins it is all good makes good. So women's empowerment, looking after children, education, working sensitive communities, saving orangutans, saving elephants, all this good works together to a great outcome. There's no downside to good. The only downside that can happen when doing good is when you leave somebody behind. I don't believe if we're going to progress in this planet or in these ecosystems, if you leave any being behind, right, you will not succeed. And so it has to be a holistic plan where
Yes.
animals, the environment, the communities, and a long-term economic future of Indonesia need to be considered in these win-win situations. So we
There's such
can't
a
leave
symbiotic,
any living being behind.
that's right. Because as you mentioned earlier, there's that symbiotic relationship where if one part of it is out of balance, it's going to have this cyclical effect.
Exactly. I mean, because the indigenous community love durians, and of course
Yeah.
the major food disperser of durians are orangutans, which spread the seeds around and shores regular trees. So you could just everything is interlinked, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And so the people destroying the planet like to let us think that these win-lose situations where we have to make these decisions, and it's not the case.
Yes,
It's the
they're very
case
linear.
exactly where the
Yes.
reality is we have a future where all beings and their species prosper and survive, and we live a better future, or we continue this win-lose idea and compete against each other, and we all go down.
Right.
And that's kind of the very short-term win-lose, toxic masculinity, I think it's something called, idea. Doesn't make sense. Which has really been failing us over the last couple hundred years. And unless we correct that now, we're not going to get to the future that we all need to get to.
Change is hard for humans. They're very quick to, how does this affect me? And we can't have this, and we can't have change unless they see this immediate right now benefit, which for those people that are destroying it's money. It's the immediate money. It's that immediate benefit that is, and so to take that, and like what you said, to work together to say, okay, it's not that you can't do what you're doing, but let's do it in a way that is sustainable and doesn't have these negative effects, these long term. That type of change can be more challenging for those people because they see it as a lot of work or more money and more effort to make less money. And that is, would you say, a lot of what you're hoping to not fight against, but unfortunately it can appear that way?
Yeah, exactly. The future we're offering is actually easier and more
Yes,
affluent. So it's like a win-win
exactly.
situation. But as you highlighted, change for humans is hard. We're not very good at it, and we normally resist it. Now, and of course, this is why it's all about love and connection and
Yeah.
empathy and listening, And so those, those are the ways of getting people to change. People think we can get people to change. You know how you got those keyboard warriors on the internet, I'm going to insult somebody and make them look small, and that's obviously going to change them. No, that just hardens them in the position. That's just your ego wanting to feel superior by criticizing
Yes.
another. If you really want to do change and good, you have to have love and empathy and connection, and support and give people the room and listen to them to allow them to change. And that's the way we make meaningful change. I think what Martin Luther King said, hate can only generate hate. So if you, even though the people destroying the planet, even if people have different views, there's love and empathy and respect that will open the doors for us to make that meaningful change that we want to have.
That's very well said, and it seems as though non-human animals seems to have captured that and embraced that philosophy more easily than humans, which is why getting back to orangutans, this is why I work cognitively with dogs, and it always amazes me how people are so amazed at what dogs can compute and achieve. Just even simple things of people are so amazed that a dog remembers what home that he lives in, or how to get out of a kennel, or how to open a door. I mean, they watch, they compute, they have cognitive skills, they have emotions, they have feelings, they have goals, and they change, they develop, they grow their brain, they learn from each other. So I'm reading about on you. So anyone listening to this, people, you have to go to the website, to Leif's website, and all this will be in the show notes, and research the information that is there, because it's extremely interesting, on top of what you're listening to in this show. But these orangutans, they actually are 97% DNA similar to ours, and they're incredibly intelligent. And like you said earlier, they can adapt, humans can adapt, but to a certain point. And they also have to have the elements there in order to do so. So they have to have their environment to do so. So one of the points I wanted to hit on is taking the babies. The poachers who are taking the babies, is that what they're doing? And they're selling them to people who want these as pets. I mean, I'm an expert in companion animals. That does not strike me as an appropriate companion animal, as much as I would love to work with their brain, because that cognition just interests me. I guess I can talk to Gary Shapiro about that. But this, tell us about that. Who thinks that this is a good idea? Who are they? Who's taking these babies, and who are they selling them to?
Yeah, I mean, every situation is unique, but in general, but it is that the rainforest is destroyed for not unsustainable agriculture, such as palm oil. The orangutans are then starving and are killed as agricultural pests as they try to, find some food in the palm oil plantation or a village's garden, and then the babies from once a mother is killed, then I go, okay, they've got a baby orangutan. Do we kill it and eat it, or is it worth something to sell on illegal pet trade? So the usual answer is yes, it's probably worth more to sell the baby, and so that's how they enter the illegal pet trade. And it tends to be the big sources of the Middle East. A lot of rich people in the Middle East keeping orangutans. It's in Thailand and Laos, for example, they have these orangutan shows. Boxing
entertainment.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My goodness. Yeah.
But also Indonesia, because it's illegal to keep an orangutan, and it's been illegal to keep an orangutan since 1958. It actually is a prestige to have one. Because what you're telling everybody, you come around to the person's house, and he's got an orangutan in the backyard. What he's telling you is, "I'm above the law," and that's so. It's, ironically, the fact that it is illegal often makes it prestigious to hold orangutans. And of course, they can only be cute and handleable to a certain age, and then they get stuck in, a small cage out the back and fed, a bad diet. So it always ends horribly.
Of course, it can't end well. There's no possible way. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, unfortunately, the rainforest is still disappearing, and therefore orangutans are still available to be killed. And 1 in 5 orphans who do have their mothers killed end up surviving long enough that our rescue teams can rescue them and start the orangutan rehabilitation and release program to get them back into the wild, not only for their sake as persons who deserve to be free in the wild, but also for their critically endangered species, because once your species become critically endangered, every individual is a genetic resource that helps that species survive.
Right. And so when they're put back into the wild, they're going to reproduce. And that's going to, let's talk about the rescue that you have. Let's talk about what's going on there and what you have and where that is. Share that with us.
We have rescue teams, and visually that looks like a four-wheel drive truck, and four brave young Indonesians, and they go around, using information from informants, or the local forestry officials will tell them about an orangutan, and then they'll go out with the forestry officials, and forestry officials provide the legal kind of basis for the confiscation, right. And then they will then take the baby back to one of our rescue centers.
Okay.
And then it would be go through the four building blocks of orangutan rehabilitation: getting their physical health sorted out, getting rid of the human diseases, making dealing with the malnutrition, dealing with the injuries that they've occurred to. And then the next building block is their mental health, recovering their poor little mind, which have been broken through the horror that they've experienced, and giving them love and attention and security. And the next building block is social skills, getting to interact and being with other orangutans and learning how to learn from other orangutans. And then the final building block is through jungle school and then soft release, learning those forest skills so they can once again have enough of their culture reinstated. It's never going to be fully reinstated, but having enough of the cultural understanding so that they can survive and start moving again to be sustainable in the rainforest.
And that's makes a lot of sense. It sounds like a wonderful rehabilitation program. Should I assume that that's going to be different for each individual? Or is there a general time length that commonly takes per individual? Or is it dependent a lot? I mean, the health, if you break that down, which you did very well, I mean, the health one is going to be different in length of time, simply because they're going to have different health issues as soon as they arrive. And then the mental and emotional rehabilitation with any species, including humans, is different individually. Is that true as well there that you're finding?
No, great. That's very insightful, because I normally get asked how long does it take, and people want to know 3 years, right? Every orangutan, 3 years to go through the process. And of course, as you intuitively understanding, no, they're all persons. They all have individual personalities, individual histories, individual outcomes. And so each one takes a different time. Some of them, they're just like, don't really need much, just, they're okay. Others take years. Some, we're getting to at the end are never going to go back. That we're trying, but then they're just going to die if we let them alone. And what we're doing with them, and we're building them now, is these open rainforest enclosures. So basically, patch of the rainforest with electric wires around them to keep them in, so they're safe.
How big would that be?
Usually, we're looking about a hectare.
Okay.
Of rainforest. And of course, especially in Sumatra, there's tigers, so it keeps the tigers out, because by the way, the tigers are lots of human tiger conflict at the moment, because swine flu is going around and killing all the pigs, and the tigers are starving, then coming out and into the villages and then causing lots of problems. And of course, they come into our rescue center in Sumatra, and so we have to protect the orangutan from the starving tigers, which is another whole conservation issue, which is probably a whole other podcast.
I was just thinking that.
But what we're doing with the orangutans in these is they're going to live out their life there in the rainforest, but being fed and supported with medical care and food. But we're going to allow them to breed. And so the offspring will grow up naturally in these rainforest habitats. And then those orangutans babies will be the top candidates to now to transfer to the release sites to start supporting the populations. So we have this win-win situation where their immediate welfare outcome of the orangutans that can't go back to wild is met in the best way possible, living in a rainforest, but just support it. And then their genes are not lost to their critically endangered species. That, yes, they may never go back to the wild, but we're going to make sure their genes go back to the wild through the offspring. And so, again, I always highlight the right outcome provides win-win solutions. And in this case, there's always win-win solutions that need to be met for the individual and the species. You know, if not, like a lot of, oh yeah, some to your pure scientist conservation. Oh, don't worry about the individuals. Just let them die. Just save habitat. Because that's far more effective. And of course, no, that's not the best outcome. The best outcome is where the individual is respected as important, as well as the whole environment and the whole species, and that provides the most effective outcome.
There has to be the ability for them to flourish naturally at some point. There has to be that handoff. So in those areas, that rehabilitation, how much human hands-on, or is that where you're sort of letting them on their own, having provided them the skills through your rehabilitation program? Is that where they are decreasing the human interaction and starting to develop on their own? Go ahead.
It's really up to the orangutan, because that's what we call a soft release. Hard release is like, hey, you're on your own. We get some point, see you later. Soft
That's the Hail Mary that just doesn't work.
The soft release is, look, we're going to softly move you to. And now they learn about the environment in 3 ways. One is their technicians teach them how to, say if they find termites, help them make a nest, help them find different foods. Then the second way is they learn off other orangutans. Oh, that orangutan knows how to make a nest. Oh, I'll watch him, and now I know how to make a nest. That orangutan knows how to get that food. I'm going to watch that one. That's why social health is so important, because without social health, they're not going to get that learning of all the other orangutans. And the third one is because orangutans are the most intelligent being that shares a planet. They just figure things out on their own.
They do.
You go, oh, no one taught them that, and they didn't learn that anyway. They just figured it out. So those are the 3 ways that they slowly develop their toolbox of survival techniques. And of course, it gets to a stage, and we have like it's not a perfect formula, but it's one that is, I guess, practical. Is they have to make a night nest every night, otherwise obviously it can be eaten by tigers. They have to find the key food sources they require non-fruiting season, otherwise they're not going to survive the non-fruiting area. And they have to know at least 120 different food sources. And when they've kind of have that criteria and they survive 3 non-fruiting seasons, we say, okay, look, we pretty much think you're okay now. We don't have to invest a lot of energy into you now. We need to focus on other orangutans who need our care.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So they eat 120 or they can eat or should eat 120 different food sources.
It's not that good in that sense. Is we know that they probably have over 2,000 different food sources.
Yeah.
And we know not only they use the product, they use medicine. They use medicine for malaria. They use topical medicines for cuts and diseases. And what the interesting thing is we're discovering not only using food sources but medicines. But when we're trying to figure out what those medicines are for, because we're seeing orangutans use it, you just ask the local community, indigenous community. Oh yeah, we use it, and we use it for the same thing. But
they learned from them.
Forest. Well, I don't know if they learned. They maybe independently learned, or
who's watching who?
Exactly. But so So now, and they learn this through culture. So intelligent animals predominantly adapt through culture, and not so smart animals adapt through natural selection. And so they get these vacant bands, long maternal periods, programmed culture. Now, unfortunately, we don't have the knowledge or the resources to program the full culture of orangutans back in the wild. That's why saving wild orangutans, saving the wild culture, saving the wild environment is number one. We're all behind the 8 ball once we're into rescue, rehabilitation, and release. So all
proactive
we can say
prevention
is
is always key. Proactive prevention is,
exactly,
yeah. So
exactly.
once
All we
again,
can
getting
say
back.
is, yeah, if you know 120, it looks like you know enough. You know enough to get by, and then the idea is over time, their culture and understanding will grow, and go back to the scale it was before they were, the mothers were killed and they were stolen from the rainforest.
And that's what needs to stop.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is a huge undertaking that it seems as though you have this incredible ability to make it just work. It has its steps, and I'm sure that was not easy, and I'm sure it's an ongoing process and ongoing learning, and you're heading there, which must just be so exciting. And all these projects, you're learning from each other and learning as you go. I'm guessing, but I'm going to hand it over to you, because I would love for you to give some tips to the listeners on some advocacy or projects that they can take on, or how they can help your projects, just on maybe a smaller scale, or a local or global. If you have something that you can share with your wisdom, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the description of myself and my work, and then moving forward, is I know very little and can do very little, right? And that's actually the nature of humanity and human beings and ourselves. We don't know as much as we think we do, and we can do a lot less than we think we can do. And so, yes, it seems I've achieved a lot, but my only achievement is my ability to collectivize, to connect with others, does it make sense, and work with others, and organize and connect. So I've achieved things, or seemingly achieved things, not because of my skill or abilities or knowledge. It's because I've been able to collectivize that skill and knowledge and ability and efficacy through a larger group. So, and I would actually argue the only way human beings have ever achieved anything is through collectivization. We never achieve things as individuals. And the example I give, for example, if you want to make money, you can get a job and make a bit of money. If you want to make real money, every capitalist knows you've got to collectivize your capital into a company and make money. And similarly, if you're a trade unionist, or you want to increase the welfare and work conditions of your people, as individuals, never going to happen. You've collectivized in a union, you're going to have some progress. That's just how we work, and that's how effective it is. So it goes on to now the listener. So as an individual, I think we've been sold this pup, where we've been saying, act locally, think globally, you act as an individual. Nah, that's why carbon footprint was actually created by British Petroleum, one of the 100 companies which caused 9% climate change, because it basically just asked you to go away and make your little changes at home and think you're going to make a difference. You're not. I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things, and we all should do those things as a moral integrity of our own self. However, if you're going to make meaningful change, we need to collectivize. Yeah. And so the Orangutan Project, as an example for your listeners, provide a particular opportunity to collectivize. Now, you can use that if you want to collectivize your capital, i.e. if you want to give us donations, right? We collectivize that money into a way and affect meaningful change, and we report back on that meaningful change. And that meaningful change is how much forest we're protecting, how many orangutans were saved, how many people we're looking after. So measuring the real on the ground outcomes, you know, and you collectivize like that. The other way is it collectivize is to get together with your community. And a lot of we got supporters, you know, all over doing quiz nights, you know, doing market stalls, you know, and working together, you know, to fundraise. So using their labor rather than the capital, but collectivizing that in a way that can make meaningful change. So those are the ways I think we can all work together. But the wonderful thing is there's always this win-win situation, because moving from caring about ourselves to caring about others, you know, and buying into a vision of a better humanity and a greater future beyond our own selfish needs actually makes us happy, healthy, and prosperous. So there's always a win-win situation. So you know, and so that's a wonderful thing about this work. So even when we're talking about fundraising, we're always after not just, yeah, we'll take your money and your time, thank you very much. No, it's about making you happier too, and healthier, more prosperous, and a life of selfless service to others is not a life of sacrifice. It's a life of beauty and reward,
Fulfillment.
beyond what maybe some of your listeners can understand yet, but they will understand if they start undertaking that journey.
That is so well said. And that's where I was thinking, for one, it's a fulfillment that you can't really understand unless you engage in the journey. And once that journey starts, and I like what you're saying about collectivism, because when people start working together, and some people are like, well, I don't have any skills, I can't do anything. Yes, you do. Everybody has some type of skill that they can bring to the table, or knowledge, or just like you said, listening is a skill. And then stepping up when somebody says something that strikes with you or hits home. And then from there, you never really know where that's going to lead or where it's going to go. You don't have to have a full game plan to start becoming involved and to become active.
Wonderful. I'm not much into hope, and there's a whole other discussion about
Yeah,
why I don't think hope's a good
there's that
idea.
Hail
But
Mary again. We don't want Hail
yeah,
Mary.
exactly. But what I am is interested in providing faith, and what I call faith in this sense is the courage to move into the unknown.
Yeah.
You know, and so for us, for example, if, you know, we want to go and make a better world, and we want to, you know, become happier and more selfless, just is hopefully what I can provide is the faith to, okay, you don't know whether you're going to be happier, healthier, and live a better life just yet. But at least provide the faith in it, which is I defined in this sense as the courage to move into the unknown and then see what happens, and see the results for yourself, not
And
so for
it
yourself
circles right
and
back.
for others around you. Yeah.
Yeah, for yourself and others around you, and see where that goes. And it goes right back to adaptability, right back to what we were talking about earlier. It's the ability to adapt and to learn and grow and change, and have the faith that you can do that, and then see how it all blends together and works, and right back again to holistic.
Exactly.
Taking that
Every
holistic.
entrepreneur or social reformer have had to have that faith. You know, if they've moved into the unknown, you know, but they've had that faith, and
Well said.
that's probably one of the things that you know, both you and me can provide people. You know, that and what I mean by faith, I mean that courage to move into the unknown.
Yeah, you just have to know that it's there and trust with it and go. So that was a really interesting answer. I really like that. It was informative, but also it leaves it up to people to take that on their own. And that's what's so important, is to start that journey on your own, in your own way, instead of so directly guided, because we're all different.
Exactly. Yeah. And we all have individual abilities and tendencies, but also whatever force is not forceful, you know, You know,
So
people
wonderful.
want to jam down your throat, what you should be doing, and taking, what the virtual signaling, and that's not the way to do it.
And we can't do that
it's
with any
providing.
animal, with
Yeah,
any
exactly.
species. Yeah. Oh, that's
Exactly.
wonderful.
And
Oh, Leif, this has been
and so
great.
kindness, compassion, and listening, that is going to
Yeah,
make us change and make others change, not pontification and arrogance about what people should be doing.
that's beautifully said. Well said. Leif, this has been wonderful. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners before we go?
No, nothing I can think of other than, thanking them for the time, and if they got something out of it. One of the other things I think you may have mentioned, I do eco tours. I take groups of
Oh,
10
yes.
people into the rainforest, and interesting enough, I take them to the forest and I show them the orangutans and the work we're doing, and meeting the real conservationists on the ground doing the wonderful, brave work that they're doing. But also, it's actually been surprising to me. Actually, what they say, that the most enjoyable thing is, I give like a talk every night. I give like an hour talk every night, like a campfire talk about different subjects, about conservation and humanity and everything else. And often that's my most rewarding part of it. So, they go on this, not only this environmental journey, on this personal journey. So, my only closing remark is, well, thank you for listening. But if you do have the means and the time, of course, I'd love to take you into the rainforest to meet these most noble of persons, the orangutans.
The orangutans, they are the most noble of persons. That is wonderful. Yes. And again, for more information on that, listeners, just go to the links in the show notes. That's an opportunity that we should all take advantage, and just, even like you said, listening to you speak and learn and grow from there. You've been incredible. This was an incredible chat, Leif. I'm honored to have chatted with you, and I hope to keep in touch. Thank you so much.
That'd be wonderful. Thanks, Billy. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.